This video is 2012 KLR 650 complete engine top and bottom rebuild. If you don't have a KLR 650, this video is probably going to be pretty boring to watch, but if you do, then this video could be a guide. I'm pretty thorough with my videography. Just know that every bike's a little bit different, so work on your own bike at your own risk. Back at it. It's a new day. I took the engine parts to the machine shop. I'm gonna have them hone out the cylinder and measure it with the bore scope to make sure that it's in round. And also I needed them to take off the sprocket off the crankshaft so that I could put a new one on it because it was damaged. Anyway, while I've been waiting on that, I've just been cleaning up the bike, cleaning the air filter out. I just scrubbed everything down with soap and water and painted the exhaust again, and yeah, just getting it generally dialed in for a reinstall. And then also I painted some engine parts. Painted these ones this like powder coated anodized look, and painted the case semi-gloss black. So yeah, I got those painted. I did have to order another part from the transmission. It's the third gear. It's this part right here. So when it gets here, I'm gonna have to take this apart and replace that third gear. That snapped and lodged itself inside of the balancer and snapped the balancer chain. I also ordered some new bearings, so we'll be doing that when they get here as well. Meanwhile, I pressure tested the head and it is a little leaky in the valve, so I ordered a valve spring compressor from Tusk. And I don't know, I wouldn't recommend ordering this from MX Powerplay or Rocky Mountain. It came used. It came with like dirt in all of this, and there's a bunch of rust on the actual tool. And it's like, what the heck, man? And the other review online said the same thing, so they must just be sending out old used rental tools or something. This thing has rust packed in here. I sprayed it with WD-40, but it's unbelievable. But anyway, $40, it's gonna work. So I'm gonna compress these springs down in here. You can kind of see them, these little circular deals around that are keepers. And that's what holds the spring on there, so you got to compress that and get the keeper out, and then you can pull the spring out this way and pull the valve out the back. What I'm going to do is when I pull all the valves out, I'm going to keep them in order, you know, exhaust left, exhaust right, intake left, intake right, and then I got some lapping compound, and I'm going to gently lap these nice and even, so it'll create a new seat on those. And I also got some seals for this side of them, so those weren't losing any compression, but these were just barely. I mean, works really well though, that's for sure. All you got to do is compress it enough to get a magnet in there. My magnet's kind of crappy, but pull those keepers out. That ain't enough. There we go. So we're working on the exhaust right. So we'll put the keeper in order over there. Keeper. Just a little half barrel thing that holds it in. Got this washer thing. Oh, it's got double springs. So then an outside spring and an inside spring. And that goes like that. The paint markings are on the top. So we'll set that up there. Alright, so here's the valve, and it slides right out the back right there. See? You can see some carbon buildup along that seat. And that's probably why it was leaking a little bit of, it wasn't leaking bad, but there's a lot of carbon on this motor. It must have something to do with being a big cylinder, but yeah, that's the area we're gonna lap. We're gonna clean this thing up real nice and work on it. So there's a whole mess of measurements we gotta do on everything with the caliper to make sure they're within the serviceable range or whatever, because if these get too weak, you know, from overuse, which I highly doubt they are, the bike's only got, you know, X amount of miles, not much, then they won't open and close the valves right. So pop the intake valve out. Look at that carbon buildup. So these should still be good, but I'll have to. Well, there you have it. You got the valves out and the valve springs out. Alright, next I took a piece of rubber hose tubing, and this is what I'm going to slide my valves into. And it that way I can pull on them, but not too hard, and it'll keep it straight. The reason why is because I'm going to have to get a hold of something coming out here. Valve lapping compound came with coarse and fine, and I think I'm just going to use the fine, but I wanted to see what the coarse looked like. Oh yeah, it's way too thick. I mean, it's got way too much. It's not too bad, but we're going to use the fine. So it doesn't take that much, so it just takes enough to get it. I'll push this valve through. Now I'll hook this tube onto the valve here. See, I might have to cut more of this tube off. I want it to be, the reason why I want there not to be a lot of space in between this is because I don't want it to bend, because that way, if it's nice and straight, there won't be any gap there. I could pull it directly straight and not like pulling at weird angle and grinding one side of the valve more than the other. So it's imperative that we cut out the scrap tube and just have straight metal basically contacting that. So I'll just start trimming a little off. So yeah, keep the drill straight. I put this finger right here in the center of to keep even pressure on it. Not much though. On a nice smooth seat. Well, I think that's good on that. Alright, doing the next one. You know, I would say if your valves are really bad, that you want to take it to a head shop and have them do it professionally. Mine aren't bad at all. I just wanted to do a little bit of grinding to make the seam nice, the seal nice. Alright, so I'm waiting on some parts. I got almost everything here except for the chain, the balancing chain. So I don't know, I detailed the bike, got it all cleaned up, changed the air filter, checked all the bushings, greased them, just went through the bike entirely and got that dialed in. And they don't leak. I did a leak down test now and it does not leak, whereas previously it did. I used diesel. now I got the piston and piston ring. So here's the piston. It's aluminum forged, and what I'm doing is checking the end gap. So I'm taking the rings. Obviously you have specifications that you need to follow, but you take the rings, put them in there, and then take a piston and gently, carefully shove it down and get it square. And then, depending on the specs, this one calls for 0.40 to 0.55 millimeters, and this is the bottom ring, so you fit it in between that gap. That's called the piston ring end gap. And this one's a little bit tight, so I got to do a little bit of grinding, just sandpaper pretty much. Grind that to where it's a little bit looser. Top ring was within spec. The oil ring you don't check, so it also came with the wrist pin and C-clip. Anyway, I got a little bit of grinding to do on this one, then I'm going to install them on the piston, and then that part will be ready to go, and then I'm basically just hanging out till I get the parts again. Anyway, so here's the process. I just take a little bit of sandpaper and just go at it a little bit, and you can always remove more, but you can't remove less, so you just got to start out slow and just go from there. You don't want it really clean before you do it, and just do that over and over. So that's what I'm going to do. Probably not going to film the whole thing, but well, yeah, since I last made a video about the KLR here, I mean, weeks have gone by. Had like multiple shipping and ordering mishaps, and there was I don't know, the parts that I ordered now got superseded by the new 2023 models, but it wasn't in their system, so it was just a big cluster mess. I won't say any names because the service department was really helpful, but it was just a pain in the ass, essentially. So I finally got it figured out. Finally ordered the parts for like the 4th time. They come from Japan, so it takes like 3 to 4 weeks to get them here, as opposed to China. So, but they're actually good Japanese OEM parts. But I almost got everything ready to go, and I'm going to start the rebuild process here, and I got everything I need. I got the bearings in, so I got to press these out, hit them with the heat gun, and hopefully get those out properly. And then the last part that I've ordered here is that 3rd gear tooth on the input shaft, the broken one. So it's right there. That'll be here in 2 days, so I can get that taken care of. Yeah, bearings here, clean up this I got to take apart this clutch that I ordered out of a wrecked bike, and since I broke my clutch trying to take it apart, it's like highly recommend you use the special tool. Lesson learned. Anyway, I just need this outer clutch basket, and I'm going to use all my clutch parts because my clutch is in good shape. I think this one is too, but I know mine is in good shape. So I swap those over. Water pump bushing, basically just gotta get that one out. It's a seal. Mine's a little bit mangled on the inside, I noticed right there, so I want to get that swapped out. Alright, reassembling it. I got the transmission, the input and the output shaft back in first, and then I put these shift forks on, and then wiggled the shift barrel in there. It took me like 20 minutes. You gotta kind of fight with it and wiggle it, but it goes in, and this all holds together while you put the other side of the case. Also got this water pump shaft, slide down in there, and this balancer. It's an internal balancer that goes in there. I don't know if you can see that. There's this internal balancer. Goes on that one. Oiling all the bearings and the gears as I go, making sure everything's super clean. I'm going to put the crankshaft in next, and then we got to do this here. Oil pickup. Had a hard time finding a new crankshaft. Alright, I got the, I think this is an oil pickup. I put a little bit of blue Loctite on this, and then the balancer here. When I took it apart, I had a washer fall out. It was a mystery washer, and anyways, it's right underneath this thing. Washer goes in between the snap ring and the bearing. The manual says that, but I was just worried that I wouldn't be able to find where it was. Anyway, found where it was. Alright, I got it super clean, so now I'm gonna do a bead of this stuff here on it. This is Moto Seal gasket maker. It's 4 crankcases. Cool, so I got all of them hand tightened, and then I started in here and did a crosshatch pattern, and then did the outside and the crosshatch pattern 2 or 3 times, and then tightened up the 78 inch-pounds. So that portion is done. I think I got to do the drain plug, so I might as well put that in. I got to do these chain guards in here, so I'll put those in. Got the neutral sensor in. So, alright, I'm back on the build. I had to tear it all apart. Not all of it, but I got the cases together, and then I realized that this balancer shaft was bent. So the reason why this thing failed is because this hit, I got wedged. Anyways, it bent this balancer shaft. So I got it all together, had to pull it all apart. Long story short, I got a new shaft, so now I'm going to go all back together with it. Alright, well I got the engine case. Alright, well I got the engine case put back together. When I did it previously, the water, or the this balancer, it's an internal balancer, wasn't spinning. Couldn't figure it out. I pulled apart 3 times. Anyway, it was this bearing that I had replaced. The guy that sent it to me, I don't want to name any names, but it was a 92045A is what I ordered, and they sent me a 92045. I didn't check that real small discrepancy. Anyways, that was a problem, so I had to order another one. Took 2 weeks. Got the right bearing. So a lesson here is check all the bearings that you replace as you replace them. Anyway, we're on to the balancer next, finally. Woohoo! Alright, I got the balancer on. Kind of complicated, but this sprocket back here has to go in between these 2 marks on that, and then the balancer on the dot and the shaft lines up on this. This one's got to be with these 2 dots indicating top dead center. Up here, this sprocket has a dot on it, and it'll be in between these 2 links, and then there's a dot on that. And so definitely want to read the manual on that, because that's the balancer, but got that all put together. Took me a little bit, and now I'll put the snap rings on here and here. There's also a washer behind this and behind this. Alright, so next I dropped down this timing chain. First, got it around this little sprocket here, and then installed this chain guard. You got to do it in that order, or else you can't get the chain around the chain guard. Next, I'm going to put this inner cover on, but I got the torsion spring doohickey right here. So anyways, I marked it up, put it up there, and then I put it on here to see where it goes. And it's supposed to go at 5 to 5:30, and that's where I'm going to drill the hole for it before I put it on. That way I don't get a bunch of metal in the engine. So I'm going to get that drilled. We'll pop a gasket on, pop this on, and then we'll move to the next step where we get the torsion spring on. So that's why I did it outside of the engine right there. Anyway, put the inner bolts, and then also a set of outer bolts for the... Alright, so I got this on, and push it down real tight and tighten this so that I can get this spring twisted around now, like we talk about. Alright, I got it on there. Mine is back a little bit further because it's a brand new chain, and this chain is still not broken in. It's not loosened up, but if it was, then this would rotate a little bit further forward, making it easier to get this spring on there. But it's done right. It's just, yeah, that chain's pretty tight. For it and make it point forward there. Put a bunch of oil on it. Both sides of the wrist pin got a C-clip. I put this one in first, slide the wrist pin through, and then put the other side in. Alright, so I oiled the rings, I oiled the cylinder, and the crankshaft. And I'm going to feed this up through it. It's good to keep this on a piece of wire so it can't fall down into the engine. And it's got these here bolts. I think just 2 of them. Alright, next is this cam chain guide, and throw the head gasket on, the 2 dowels, and clean the surfaces real good, and then we'll get ready to put the head on. One thing to note is to wait to tension these down, just finger tight them, these banjo nuts, until after we tight the cylinder head. Okay, next to put the cams back in, these arrows have to point towards the front of the engine on both of these. So I got those on. Engine has to be at top dead center, and then you pull this tight around the front. Make sure that it's on this sprocket right and on this sprocket right. I mean, definitely want to refer to the manual on that, But yeah, so I got these on, so now we're putting this thing on. There's 2 long bolts that go on the outside and 1 short bolt on the inside. Alright, I got this installed, and that nut right there gets Loctite. Anyway, got these caps put back in. They got dowels in every single one of them. This one's combined, so you put it in at the same time, oil it all, and then torque them in sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3 different phases. Blah blah blah. Read the manual. 106 final torque spec. Next, we're doing the cam chain tensioner, and comes with the new gasket. You got to clean it up real good, and then basically, yeah, put it in there and bolt it down. Alright, next got the valve cover. It's got the 2 longer bolts on the left side. Or no, wait, the 2 shorter bolts are on the left side, the 2 longer bolts are on the right side. In the manual it calls to use some silicone on these 2 parts here. New gasket on that. Also did the thermostat, pretty simple. It's 3 bolts pointing forward towards the front of the engine. I did a real teeny bead of silicone on that. RTV, just to be safe. And then we got this water jacket I reinstalled. It's pointing to the right if you're looking at the front of the engine. So I'm going to torque these down and move on to the next. Alright, next we're on the clutch side. This balancer, it's the final balancer. It's the external part of the water pump. It goes on the shaft. There's a mark on it that goes on, and then this flat washer goes on, and the nut, and this is torqued to like 38 pounds. Fold that nut over. Secondly, we got this primary gear putting on. It's got a Woodruff key, and then the secondary gear here. Another flat washer and a nut, and that's 114 pounds. So I'm going to go ahead and get those on, torque it down. Got to use the rotor tool in the back to hold it, because that's quite a bit of torque to just kind of hold. Okay, so I torqued this down to 114. Had to use the rotor tool to hold that side. Oil pump's got 3 little Phillips screws on it, so that goes back on. New gasket. Those are torqued to 23, I believe. Don't quote me on that. Next, we installed this shift lever. It's got a spring on this side, and it also hangs on that right there. This sits in a shoulder inside of this metal thing, centers it, so it's kind of like an axle, so it can rotate freely. And then it's got to sit on the detent on the neutral right there. I don't know if I mentioned this, but this gets put in on top of the shift barrel. It gets 78 foot-pounds with some blue thread lock. Now I got the shift lever here. This is going to slide in through that, and in between those 2 marks there has got to be centered on this deal. And that's the next step. Next, going in with the clutch, gets this washer first, then this collar, then the clutch basket. Well, I ran into a small problem. I ordered a clutch online. Apparently they changed them in 2012, which is what year mine is. This clutch won't work. The springs are smaller. There's 7 and 8 plates versus 7 and 7. So anyways, I have to order a $600 clutch online. So for now, I got the case this side on, just tacked with a couple screws, so when that gets here I can put it in, but I gotta put it in. I'm gonna put the machine in the bike, or the motor in the bike, in the frame, put the motor back in, and then I can just come in and do that. But other than that, good to go. All this stuff's replaced stuff, but yeah, that clutch isn't gonna work, so that's unfortunate. Well, I got it back to this point. While I'm waiting on the clutch and the spacer that's missing, I'm gonna put it back in the bike. It's supposed to have 2 spacers there. There's only 1, and I think the guy who owned the bike before me tried doing the doohickey but backed out and didn't put that spacer back, and I think that's what caused the transmission to break off a tooth or whatever. But anyway, I'm gonna get it closed up and get it back installed in the bike, get everything hooked up as far as I can, and then in 10 days or whatever, when I get the OEM parts, I'll put them in and finish the thing up, and should be good to go. Okay, I finally got the engine back in. It was quite a task with this valve cover and head still being on there. But anyway, got to get this one to line up, and then there's a chain guard thing on here, right there. The swing arm was the biggest pain. I had to undo the bottom link, that way I could manipulate the swing arm better. And then we got this top one up here, just these nuts. I got to get another one there. Well, I don't quite know what happened, but I think the SD card went corrupt. Basically, to reinstall it, it's just the reverse order of the teardown video. It's pretty straightforward, but we ended up taking our motorcycles on several motorcycle adventures. One of them was to the Frank Church Wilderness in Montana, about a 1,200 mile adventure. Also, several camping trips. And the bike runs great, good compression, everything came out right. Yeah, so I got about 4,000 or 5,000 miles on the bike since the rebuild, and I'm real happy with the way it turned out. Also took my motorcycle hunting for the bear.